Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So, in this video, we're going to talk about a very upsetting case. So, I just want to give you that trigger warning immediately because this is distressing. I know I talk about true crime, all the cases are distressing in their own way. But I think this is probably the most distressing case I've ever witnessed. I just cannot believe that it's been allowed to happen. Can't believe it's happened. And this little boy, Preston, Preston Davey, 13, 14 months old, was subjected to the most horrific A that you can imagine. Anyway, the thing is, there's there's so much about this case that makes me really angry. So I may get angry. I may start crying. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. I'm trying to be level. I've watched quite a lot about this case already to try and what's the word? I haven't done a video about it before because I had to let the anger abate in me and the rage, the sadness abate in me a little bit. But of course, it may come back as I'm talking about him. The first thing I want to do is show you this little boy. Very short life that he had, and at least 4 months of his very short life, he was, not treated well at all by his dads, his monster dads. So this baby was adopted by these two scumbags. I haven't got any other words to say for these men. A couple adopted a baby, so you would think it's quite common nowadays, isn't it? That couples that normally wouldn't be able to have children because of their biology, are now having sort of children, either adopting them or maybe one of the parents will be the biological parent, and the other one, and it's a common thing, and it should be that people have the chance to be parents if that's what they want. But the thing is, how they getting vetted? Like, to me, I think the crux of this is how are people getting vetted to adopt children? Not only same-sex couples, but all people that adopt children. How are they getting vetted? What are the criteria that you get a little vulnerable child, baby like this that cannot protect itself, can't even say what's happening to it, can't even tell people about it? What is the criteria, the vetting process that people have to go through? Because it seems to me that this couple, look at him hugging his dog. Yeah, obviously loves his dog. God knows what abuse his dog has suffered. But the other guy in the white shirt, he's a teacher, or he was a teacher, not a teacher now, of course, he's in prison. But yeah, they look, this is what I say in every video I do. Monsters do not look like monsters walk amongst us. They've got friends, they've got partners, they've got families. They're popular. People like them. They work in caring professions. Quite often they deliberately gravitate towards caring professions because that's where they meet their victims, the vulnerable. This guy's a teacher working with children. And when you find out what he allegedly did to this child, I don't even want to say allegedly because it's not allegedly, because they videoed it. There's videos, there's proof. Why they're pleading guilty, not guilty, I have no idea. How can you plead not guilty when there's videos of it? Anyway, that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. So I just want to give you a warning. It's very upsetting. I know YouTube won't like it. I mean, I've hummed and hawed about whether even to do a video about this because, apart from it being upsetting, YouTube won't like it. They won't, what's the word? They won't promote it. Do you know what I mean? Put it out there. But the thing is, because of its content, because of the nature of its content, and then I thought about it, and I thought, the thing is, if we avoid these difficult subjects, and it is a difficult subject to talk about, it is an upsetting subject to talk about. So what do? Just not talk about it and pretend it's not happening? You know, it's like, then I want everybody to know about these two men and what they did to Preston. I want everybody to know so that when they go to prison, or if they're ever released on at any point in the future, I mean, what sort of sentence will it be, even if they're found guilty? You know, we don't know, do we? Because it could only be 15-year sentence. So they may be released. I want everyone to know who they are. You know, and I'm only a small YouTube channel. I can only do my little bit. But I'm doing this video for Preston. So I knew I would get upset. Sorry. So let me put Preston's picture up instead of looking at me blubbing. I'm doing it for Preston because nobody cared enough about Preston, you know, to save him from this. And he hasn't got a voice. He never had a voice because he was too young. But we have to be his voice. And we have to talk about him. That's my opinion anyway. So very quickly, I just want to say thank you to everyone for liking, for subscribing. You know the drill by now. Thank you. Please leave your DNA on the like button, the subscribe button. Special thanks to my members live tomorrow night. Special thank you to those of you who buy me coffees, etc., and all those things. Send me emails. Leave nice comments. Thank you. You're what keep me going. And hi, lovely lurkers. Sorry, this is going to be a very sad video. Hi, replay crew. But we should not turn our face away. Right, so compose myself. Where's me? Gosh. So yeah, many cases that we talk about are very distressing, but there's not many cases that are more distressing than this. So I just have to warn you of that. I mean, I won't be going into gory details, I never do. But I'm going to the thing that I want to talk about most of all is how were these people allowed to adopt Preston? What are the checks that are made before people are allowed to adopt a baby? You know, in my personal opinion, they should have to give over all their electronic devices, first of all, you know, before, I mean, I'm sure they do background checks on them, but just because somebody hasn't got any crimes in their past doesn't mean to say they've never done anything. The thing is, to me, first thing that should happen when someone applies to adopt a child, any child, but especially a baby, I suppose at least older children have got a voice and can say if something's wrong, but, you know, they're normally too scared to. But, you know, babies can't. Their electronic devices, when someone applies to adopt, in my opinion, first thing they should do is take their they have to give up all their social media, electronic devices, and to see if, because I bet you 100%, I mean, it hasn't been mentioned yet as far as, because it's the trial that's going on at the moment of these two monsters. I bet 100% there's other things on their phones, apart from horrible videos of Preston. I bet that any money there's other videos on their phones or other inappropriate photos, etc. They won't have suddenly adopted a baby and everything's normal they're 100% normal, and then they adopt a baby and then they turn into monsters. They were monsters already. And I feel that they planned, their reason for adopting a child was not because they wanted to be dads, or because they wanted to give some little one a home rather than them stay in foster care. They deliberately adopted this baby to do what they did to it. And they're just now, they'll be, obviously Preston died because of what was done to him. They perhaps didn't intend that, because they were probably intending to do this to this child for his whole life, and unfortunately for them, but luckily for little Preston, really, because he's out of suffering now. He's out of pain. He's out of suffering. I mean, it could have gone on for years, couldn't it? So Preston is in a better place being with them, that's for sure. But he deserves this world, but he get it. So we can't bring Preston whatever happen. But what should be done when somebody is trying to adopt a baby or any child, and whether they're men, women, whether it's a gay couple, whether it's a female couple, but whoever it is, they should have their electronic devices taken. They should have to volunteer all their social media, all their electronic devices, because I just feel that there would have been if they would have had to do that, they wouldn't have done it, because they would already have had things on their devices that aren't right, won't they? I think, anyway. May come out in the trial as it goes on. Now, let me just see. Hi, Mark. Terrible. And do you know what else is terrible? Because it's not only them. I mean, obviously they did it, and they're the ones that are up in court, and hopefully justice will be served one way or another. But they talked openly about Preston in a derogatory way. We'll see that in a minute. They're friends. Everybody knew they were struggling. Because the thing is, when people, this couple that adopting a baby, it wasn't, as I say, but it was deliberately to abuse the baby. But also, it's like it's like where, everybody's got a Gucci handbag, so I want a Gucci handbag. It was that, we want both gay couples to adopt babies now. So we want a baby like everybody else. It wasn't because of any internal feelings, which a lot of people do. And I'm not criticizing gay people adopting babies. What I'm saying is, where's for any adopts a baby? Where's the vetting process? Hi, Justice Jane. I think they adopted this child for two reasons. One, for what they were going to do to him. I can't mention the A word on that. I mean, really, I shouldn't. YouTube's definitely going to red flag this video. But one, for the what they wanted to do to him. They probably thought, oh, I've got like a little there. It's for their benefit, for their sex gratification. They'd be thinking, oh, we've got this until they're sort of a teenager or whatever. But I think the other reason was, just like an accessory. Do you know what I mean? Just like a handbag or a bloody designer T-shirt or something. Oh, yeah, we want a child. All our friends have got one. It's disgusting that they were ever allowed. And, it turns out, of course, as people who've got children will know, the idea of having children is always nicer than the reality. you know what I mean. It's not all hearts and flowers. You know, you get a baby, you look forward to having your baby, and it's lovely, and there are lovely times. But then, you know, it gets difficult. They don't sleep, or you know, it's not just oh, you've got a baby and you know you put it in its and then take it out. They never cry and get ill, and you have to worry about them. It's a you know, having children is a big responsibility, and sometimes you don't realise that till you actually have one. So the idea of having children is not like the reality. It's difficult. It is difficult, and we all know that who've got children, and it doesn't get any less difficult as the kids do. In fact, it gets harder. So they've adopted. Let's have a look at it. I mean, when I look at his little face, I think this is what does it for me. Look at him. Oh, just an adorable little boy. And his little smile. And he deserved better. He deserved better. He deserved somebody who loved him. How can? So what sort of monster can look at a little baby like that with that little face and that little smile and just makes them want to do horrible things to it? What's you know, these are bad people, but they were walking amongst us. One of them a teacher. So where did this happen? Well, sadly it happened in the UK, in Blackpool of all places. Blackpool, well known for many things, but actually a lot of crimes that we've covered. You know, there's a lot of, I don't know, it just seems like do people care about children in Blackpool? I don't know. It just feels sometimes, God, you know, what's going on in Blackpool? Anyway, so Blackpool is in the UK. It's in the north of the UK. It's not that far from Liverpool, Manchester, and that's where all this happened. You know, I just sometimes at night, you know, things, you know, not only at night, but times when I'm thinking, you know, when you're leading your normal life, having your breakfast or doing whatever you're doing in your normal routine, what horrible things are happening all over the world, you know, in that moment that you're having your coffee and your toast. Some little babies being abused somewhere, or somebody's being murdered somewhere. I mean, that's why you have to put your psychic shield around you, because you know sometimes you can get overwhelmed by the evil in the world, and it's cases like this that do it, I think, that do overwhelm you, and you know, you can this is the way things happen. Anyway, so we're going to look at the court case, what's happened so far. Now, they did have to they had to discharge the jury at one point, because I think the evidence was so upsetting. So they did have to discharge the jury at one point. But it seems to be continuing now, the trial. So let's have a look. First of all, let's just have a look where it says on this BBC article. So these are comments that this couple made to their friends. Look at, there he is again, his little face. The teacher said baby was dead meat, the jury hears. So apparently this teacher, he made a lot of comments to friends about, you know, how irritating Preston was, and, you know, wouldn't sleep and this, that and the other. And, you know, he actually, so it's almost like he did it in plain sight, you know, because they had a social, you know, these people, they weren't, this couple, They weren't, what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't isolated. You know, they had a social network. And these are the sort of things that they said. So a former teacher accused of sex abusing and killing an adopted baby said the child was dead meat and that he had red rummed him in the weeks before the infant died. These were jokes he made to his friends. So Jamie Varley, 37, and his partner, John McGowan-Fazakerley, I don't know how to pronounce that, I don't care really, 32, adopted 13-month-old Preston Davey in April 2023, Preston Crown Court heard. For just under 4 months after his adoption, he was allegedly routinely ill-treated and suffered 40 traumatic injuries at the defendant's home in Blackpool. And he finally died in hospital on the 27th of July 2023. So they're pleading not guilty. I mean, so that's the reason why all the details have to come out. Surely, why didn't they have the decency at least to plead guilty? I mean, they've taken videos, for God's sake. So Varley denies murder, and McGowan, what's his name, denies allowing the death of a child, as well as multiple other offences. Now, after undergoing an assessment and a familiarisation process, Preston was adopted and began living with the defendants on the 1st of April 2023. So they passed some sort of assessment and familiarisation process, but it won't have involved their social media or, you know, handing over their phones or their computers. You definitely should have to do that, shouldn't you? You know, you should have to do it. Anyway, so this is what happened, and warning. After undergoing this assessment, so just days later, Varley, who took a year off work as head of year at a high school, so he was the head of his year as well. He took a year off to adopt a child. He confessed he was struggling with a lack of sleep due to the baby constantly waking in the night. I'm sorry, what, did he not know that babies wake in the night? I mean, come on. You don't need to be an expert on baby care to know that when you have a baby, quite often they don't sleep through the night. You know, that's like, how would you, I just can't even believe you could bring that up as any type of excuse for anything. Anyway, so on the 6th of April, he texted his sister, a baby sleep trainer. She's a baby sleep trainer. And he said, he's dead meat today. Didn't sleep last night after 11:30, up every 1.5 hours. So there's a red flag right there. Do you ever, you know, you might say, oh God, I'm exhausted, didn't get any sleep last night. But would you say about your baby, really, he's dead meat? All these red flags, it's red flag after red flag, but nobody stepped in. 4 days later, he sent his mother, Karen Graham, a video of Preston in his walker. And she replied, clever boy. This is his mother. And then Varley replied, this was before he was murdered and put to bed. I don't think that's normal language, even though you might say things, oh God, you know, you might, you know, oh God, I just can't sleep, or I don't know what might you say, but you would not say, or I've never heard anyone say about their baby, ever. Never, ever have I heard anyone say this was before he was murdered and put to bed as a joke about a baby. Then he texted his friend, first sleepover, I wanted to put him in the field with the cows. But then he went on to describe him as a ray of sunshine. He said the child was refusing to go to sleep, said he was very needy, and he texted another friend, "He's just annoying, lol." He went on to tell the friend, "Right now we are questioning every choice." You should have given him back, because you know what? It's not an accessory. It's not a Gucci handbag that doesn't speak or doesn't do anything. He's a baby. And do you know what? This poor baby, it seems like he was fostered for a while before he was adopted. And he seemed very happy with his foster mum. She said he was a very happy baby. So can you imagine for him? He's been taken from that home, from his foster home where he seemed to be settled and happy, and then he's given to these two men, and whatever that will have felt different to him, because not because they're men, but because he's moved from one home to another. He's got different parents all of a sudden, and he's not a tiny little baby like 3 weeks old that wouldn't notice. He'd notice the change in his surroundings, and like, where's my mum? Because he's thought of his foster mum as his mum for all that time. And now suddenly he's with these two men. And he would have felt unsettled. Didn't they know that? Of course he would have been unsettled. He's an unfamiliar surrounding. Apart from the fact he's actually being aid, apart from what was happening to him, how he had a smile on his face in all those photos of him, I don't know. So he said, "We are questioning every choice." And in other messages, he said, "Preston is crying all the time, and they were really struggling as the lack of sleep was a nightmare." Selfish. So foster parent Sandra Cooper looked after Preston for 10 months after his birth in June 2022. He had been taken into care by Oldham Council when he was 5 days old. 5 days old. So there's probably some substance issues with his real parents. I don't know. We don't know. I wonder if they know about what happened to Preston. Do they know when they see this on the news that this is their baby that they put up into care? I mean, it's such an inappropriate name, isn't it? Oh yeah, they went into care. They don't care about these babies that go into care and children. They quite often end up being ABU, SED, don't they? Quite often, whatever age they are. So it's such a misnomer, isn't it? Oh yeah, put into care. Should be put into don't care. Should be, who's put into couldn't give a shit about this child. Not put into care, put into bloody don't care. So I feel for her because she's the foster parent. She had him for 10 months. So that's quite a long time. So Preston was settled, wasn't he? No wonder he was unsettled when he had to go somewhere else, because, 10 months in a little baby's life, it's a long time, isn't it? And where he was probably looked after, and then he was released to these two monsters, who did what they did to him. It just doesn't bear thinking about, does it? But it has to be thought about, and you have to confront these difficult issues, I think. So a statement from Mrs. Cooper was read to the jury and said Preston was a very happy baby. And she said he was not a good sleeper, but he quickly went back to sleep by having his head stroked. Oh my God, this poor little guy. He just needed some love and attention, and he ended up with literally two demons. What they did to him, honestly, it's just satanic. I can't describe it any other way. The way they treated him. She said that after Preston's dairy intolerance was identified and his milk changed, he was happy and content, and he was a perfectly healthy baby. He's a beautiful baby as well, so beautiful, bless his little face. So she handed him over to these defendants at the end of March 2023. But in the following months, Preston was taken to hospital 3 times, once with a fractured left elbow. How does a baby fracture their elbow? Why was that not? So there, right. So there's another red flag right there. So he's taken to the hospital 3 times. I'm going to put Preston's picture up while I talk about this because we have to look at him. Absolutely heartbreaking, Jane. His picture needs to be up. I'm going to put his little picture up. He's beautiful, beautiful little baby. Just did not deserve the hand he was dealt, did he? Just nobody deserves that anyway. But so there's another red flag that was ignored. Hospital 3 times, once with a fractured left elbow. How did that happen? Not the elbow, I'm talking about how did that happen that was missed? I mean, I remember years ago, one of my nephews, his son, he was always falling over. You know, if he could find something to fall down, he would. He fell off the step, he fell down the stairs. I've got pictures of him when he was a baby. He's just constantly got a bruise on his forehead. And they were interviewed, you know, at the hospital. The hospital, you know, took them aside and, you know, sort of was asking them questions because it's like, you know, the 3rd time that he's in there with a bruise on his head. So how was this not picked up on? And then on the 27th of July, 2023, little baby Preston, that little face that you can see there in front of you, was rushed to hospital by the defendants because they were shitting themselves because they're thinking he's going to die. How? They didn't care about Preston dying or Preston being poorly or anything. They didn't care about that. What they cared about was they're going to get found out, that they're not this lovely gay couple, you know, nice friend, you know, close with their family and with a social network, that they're actual twats, monsters. They were going to get found out to be monsters. That's why they were panicking. Anyway, they took him there unconscious and in a state of cardiac arrest. And medics could not revive him. And what Varley told the police, so Varley is the one that is thought to have done the most abuse, and he is the teacher, he's the teacher, head of year. He told police he had briefly left the child in the bath, and when he returned, he was drowning. Now, nobody leaves a 14-month-old baby alone in a bath for a start. So that was the excuse he came up with. They probably sat there and tried to work that out. What we're going to say when we go to the hospital, what we're going to say. What, you know, can you imagine him? What sort of conversation are you having with your partner when you're discussing, oh God, what we're going to say to the hospital when we get there? I just can't believe nobody picked up on this, you know, before it came to the worst of the worst. So now this trigger warning for this, because this is what the post-mortem examination found. Multiple, non-accidental, internal, and external injuries. A cause of death to be acute upper airways obstruction, either by smothering or an object or objects inserted into his mouth. Now, leave it to your own imagination, think what that object might have been. And there are videos. Videos were taken of the sex abuse of little Preston, but they're pleading not guilty. Varley denies, right, murder, manslaughter, 2 counts of assault by penetration on a baby. 14-month-old baby, 5 counts of cruelty to a child, grievous bodily harm, sex assault of a child, 13 counts of taking indecent photos or videos of a child, 1 of distributing an indecent photo of a child to his co-accused, his partner, and 1 of making an indecent photo. That's the charges against him. This teacher, this head of year, the guy that was texting his sister and his mum, wonder what they think about it. Or do they think that, oh no, our little Johnny couldn't possibly have done that? Oh, it's breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking. I've never, ever, I hope I never hear of anything like this again. And I've never heard of anything like this before. And he's pleading not guilty, even though there's photographic evidence. So that's making it even worse, because people have to, I mean, poor little, because we don't know who the biological parents are, I hope they don't know about it, because I'm sure, when you're in a position where you allow your child to go into foster care or foster don't care, I'm not saying the foster parent didn't care, she probably did, but you know what I'm saying. It's normally because you can't look after them for whatever reason, isn't it? But you may love them desperately, but you know that child staying with you would not be good for the child. You give the child up often. I know people that have given children up to adoption, and it's because they were either too young at the time to look after them. There's various reasons. I mean, a child can be born from an act of violence, sex violence. There can be substance, addiction, just poverty, all those reasons that somebody would give up a child does not mean that they don't love them. It means that either they don't feel they're capable of looking after them, or the state, for whatever reason, doesn't feel they're capable of looking after them. So whoever gave up this child, whoever gave up little Preston for adoption, I'm sure they thought, in the meantime, he was at least being looked after, and maybe they would get him back one day. Maybe if they got their life on the straight and narrow, they ended up in a better financial situation, if they managed to get off the drugs, or whatever the situation was, or as they got older and settled more, maybe they were thinking that one day, they might be able to have a relationship with this child, when after years had gone by. But they'd be thinking in their head, oh, well, at least they're being looked after. At least they're being looked after. Oh, yeah, and if they did know where they'd gone, they've got Preston, I suppose, these 2 guys looking after him, maybe financially they were quite well off, head teacher, head of year at school, taking a year off, of course, for having the new baby, taking advantage of his paternity leave. And so they'd be thinking, oh yeah, Preston's getting a better start in life than I could have given them. I would imagine. And when the foster parent had to give him up, that's probably a wrench. Being a foster parent is a lovely thing to do, but you have to give them up at some stage, don't you? So that would have been hard. Preston, a baby, would be hard to give up, especially a beautiful little baby like that. And but probably the foster parent too was thinking, oh, it's great that Preston's going to a couple, an established couple who look after him, and just, and the guy's a teacher, and I don't know what the other guy does, but and the dog lovers, and this, that, and the other. And all the time, what they didn't know, that when she handed over that baby, she was handing that baby over to literal demons, monsters. It's like you're really in hell when you listen to this story. So that's what he's accused of, and McGowan-Fazakerley, or whatever his stupid name is, denies allowing the death of a child, 3 counts of child cruelty, and 1 count of the sex assault of a child. So that's this. The case is continuing. Just videos, Jane. Videos. There's videos. There's photos. There's a video. Well, let's look at this. So this is one of the videos. Well, you don't see the video. Don't want to see the bloody video either. But they talked about a video in court. Let me just make. I need to take this because it's a video. A video was shown to the jury. Not only the jury, but everybody was there. The bed couldn't breathe. I think after he'd probably been assaulted orally. That's basically, seems to me, what happened. How he died in the end, but it happened to him before because he had videos and pictures. It's literally. So this is them. These are the artist's impressions of them. Jamie Varley on the left and his co-defendant John McGowan on the right. God, yeah, looked like butter won't melt. Let's look at this video of the. It's not the video of. It's not a graphic video. It's just the video of the ITV reporter. Hope you can hear it. Let me know if you can hear it, because you know some.
Introducing.
Hang on. Why is it stopped?
The world's first privacy display on the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra. Pick up yours and save up to £528. Plus, claim Galaxy Buds 4 worth £159.
Come on.
O2. Essential for living.
Or suffocating Preston before adding that he'd never carry out those thoughts. Now, the court...
So there you go, another red flag. So he'd actually told a colleague, so presumably another teacher, that he'd had dark thoughts about suffocating or drowning Preston. And that colleague didn't go to the police. Let's let that sink in for a minute. So your colleague says to you, who's just had a baby or just adopted a baby, oh, I've got dark thoughts about suffocating them or drowning them, and you don't go to the police. What? Honest to God, I'm speechless with this case. It's just when you think it can't get any worse, it gets worse. So not only the 2 men who've done this to Preston, but the other people who just ignored all the signs.
Heard that ex-co-worker thought it was some kind of, quote, protective thing, a parent whose mind had gone to a worst-case scenario, not something anyone would actually do. Mr. Varley assured her he'd told social workers how he was struggling. He told them everything, so she dismissed the conversation. It was later that she told police when she found out the 13-month-old had...
He told her, so a woman as well, he told her that he'd spoken to social workers about these dark thoughts. Do you imagine what the fucking social workers actually do? You know, honestly, God, I'm so angry about this. So here's a guy who's just adopted a baby, a little vulnerable baby, took it out of a foster home where it seemed like he was being looked after and happy. He's just adopted this baby. He's saying he actually told social services he was having these dark thoughts of drowning this little baby and smothering him or kill. What? And they left him there. For fuck's sake, sorry. I'm like, they left him there. They left him there, even though this guy, I mean, really, to be fair to him, what can he do more than actually say to the social workers, I'm having fantasies about smothering and killing this baby, for fuck's sake. They should have got that baby out of there immediately. So this is what I'm saying. Preston hasn't only been let back down by these two scumbags that hopefully will get some prison justice. I really, you know, I do hope that they do. I don't like to wish harm on people, but these two, if anyone deserved any harm being done to them, it's these two. And but even apart from them, Preston was let down by the social services themselves, a social worker who this guy apparently told that he was having these thoughts about, Preston. The colleague that he spoke to and told her that he was thinking that he had these dark thoughts. Even his own family, when the way he'd referred to him as dead meat and, you know, said, oh, I'm going to put him out in the garden. You don't talk about your baby like that. Nobody, you know, if you love your baby, you do not ever say they're dead meat. You know, you might say, oh, God, you know, I'm exhausted and he's driving me mad. Or, you know, none of us are perfect. So for most of us, our babies have probably got on our nerves at some point. But you don't, it just his very way of referring to him, because he doesn't think of him as a human being. He's just an accessory to this guy. He's just like, just like a designer bag or a designer T-shirt. They wanted a baby just because that's fashionable now for gay couples to have babies. And you know what's an insult to gay couples who do have babies that don't do this to them? You know, because then people start looking sideways at gay couples and things. But they've not done this because they're gay. They've done this because they're monsters. They could be monsters, whether they're gay, you know, whatever they are. Monsters exist in all walks of life. And unfortunately, this will make some people even more skeptical of gay couples adopting children. So it's terrible on every count.
Died. Mr. Varley, seen here on the left in the dock, is accused of killing Preston, as well as 25 other charges relating to sexual and physical mistreatment. His co-accused and partner, John McGowan-Fazakerley, who's 32 and also from Blackpool, is accused of allowing or causing the death of a child.
It's about that.
Yeah, those were played on the big screens in the court. One showed Preston on his back, the prosecution say struggling to breathe. It was said to have been taken on Mr. Varley's phone on the day Preston died in July 2023, hours before his death. The jury were told that an expert who reviewed the footage says it shows signs of Preston in respiratory failure. There was also CCTV from the hospital where Preston was taken by the two men on that night. It shows Mr. Varley with his head in his hands. The prosecution say that was, quote, for show, and his explanation that the youngster drowned in the bath, medical evidence. Instead, they say he was sexually assaulted and smothered. The first witnesses in this case will give evidence tomorrow.
Oh, so that's what's going to be happening today. The first witnesses follow the case. You know, I say it's so upsetting, but how, you know what? This little mite, he needs someone to be a voice for him. You know, I just want everyone to know what piece of shit these two are, what pieces of shit they are. Oh, look at him there in his shirt and tie and his smile, the teacher. Yeah. Do you think that a man who's capable of doing what he's done to this baby, and he has done it because there's video evidence of it, can plead not guilty? What grounds is pleading not guilty? I have no idea. When there's video evidence of what he did to this baby, yeah, I can't believe that he hasn't done anything else to. You know, sometimes you see monsters who love children in the wrong way. They gravitate towards jobs that work with children, don't they? Teaching positions. You know, being a teacher exposes you in a school, exposes you to vulnerable children. It's not difficult to find it. You know, what's so sad and what's something that I've come to realise is so many children are vulnerable, aren't they? Because, you know, even if they are being loved at home, you know, if they do come from a loving home, because growing up in general is such a difficult time in people's lives, isn't it? I think people are always vulnerable, no matter what. Children are always vulnerable, no matter what home they come from. Because even if they come from what you might think of as a good home, where they are loved and they go through so much. You know, as you're growing up, you go through so much turbulence, don't you, in your mind, in your own mind, regardless of what the outside circumstances are. There's sometimes children who are being brought up badly, if you like, or treated badly at home. They do quite well in school because they're just glad to be out of the house, you know, and I know that for a fact. You're just so glad that you're not having to be at home with whatever's going on at home. And they trust their teachers, don't they? Teachers, you know, children develop crushes on teachers, don't they? Because they're people they look up to, and, you know, that's the way their mind works when they're young. Young minds are always looking for someone to look up to. So that's probably why he became a teacher. He's probably done other things to other children. And as I say, if his social media would have been checked and his phone would have been handed over and his computer would have been handed over before he was allowed to adopt. You want to put that in the rules for adopting, that you have to hand over all your electronic devices and let them be examined to make sure. I'll tell you what, you could examine my electronic device, and you would. The only suspicious thing you might find on my things is, of course, about true crime. You know, so when you're researching but you'd never find, you know, anything about children, or, do you know what I mean? That he's bound to have other images of other children somewhere in his, or he would have done at one point. Don't believe that he just suddenly adopted Preston and then just suddenly started doing bad things. He'll have done bad things before. They must have talked about it. Him and his partner, because they did this together. You know, they sent each other, he sent his partner photos of the abuse. So the partner can't say, oh, he didn't know about it because it all happened when he was out of the house. He's like sending him a photo saying, oh, look what I did today. You know, I did this with Preston. We played together. Yeah. And the other guy didn't go to the police. So he's just as guilty. He's just as guilty. In fact, even more so in my mind, because you presume that this teacher who actually did the fucking whack, you know, he's not right-headed. But the other guy, along with it, he's enabled him. You know, he knew about it, but he still didn't go to the police or anything. He still didn't. That's his duty as a parent. You know, what did he? So. Why did he want to adopt a child in the first place? This is it, to abuse them. That's why they want it. Little Preston had his card marked the day he went home with these monsters, these two monsters. Little Preston didn't stand a chance because he couldn't tell anybody what was happening to him. And even though he was taken to the hospital 3 times, and I don't know if he had to go to the doctor or anything like that, a fractured wrist or elbow, wasn't it? How does a baby get a fractured elbow? I mean, they'll have come up with some reason, I suppose, fell off the bed, you know, I don't know, fell out of his crib, whatever, banged his elbow. But fracturing your elbow, I think you could only I'm not a doctor, but I know because my son had a fractured elbow from boxing when he was out boxing when he was older, obviously, and fractured his elbow. You don't fracture your elbow easily. It's not like fracturing. It's like, I think they'll have grabbed him by the elbow. That's how his elbows got fractured. Somebody grabbing him. Poor little thing. So I'm going to follow this case, even though it's upsetting, because you know what, this little boy, he deserves. Look at his little face, so trusting, you know, smiling, and what was happening to him, you know, in the background they're taking, but you can see he's got all the toys there and everything. He's always dressed nice, posing for a nice little photo. You know, they're pretend parents, aren't they? Pseudo parents. Yeah, everything's, they wanted a baby, but they wanted a baby who would just sit there and smile and let them abuse it, and wouldn't cry at night, or, you know, dirty its nappy, or any of the things that babies do. No, they didn't want all that side of it, did they? You know, unfortunately, that's what comes with having a baby. It's not all smiles and cuddles. You know, they do keep you up at night. They do poo their nappies. They do, you know, so they have tantrums. Do you know, like, and sometimes they cry and you can't find a reason why they're crying. And it is frustrating, of course it is. But that's what dummies are for, isn't it? It's like, maybe they were there because you get these people say, oh, I'm not giving them a dummy, it's bad for them. I tell you, I used to think that until I had a baby, and then I had a dummy with me 24 hours a day, because when your baby's crying and they need comfort, dummies work. And, you know, I was lucky I didn't have you know, when it comes to time to take the dummy away, like about a year old, it wasn't an issue. I didn't make a big issue of it. You know, that's the other thing. Sometimes it can be difficult to wean children off a dummy. I know that. But anybody, you know what, anybody who thinks a dummy is not a good thing, well, when you have a baby, you might feel differently. I don't know. When you do want to get some sleep because you've got work in the morning or whatever. But anyway, this is a very sad story of little Preston Davey, and I'm going to be following this case. I still can't believe that these monsters are pleading not guilty when there's video evidence, phone evidence. So they're making it go through a trial. You know, they should plead guilty, you know, so that this horrible, you know, these horrible things that happen to Preston don't have to be public knowledge. Just awful. This is, honestly, I can honestly say, I think this is the most horrible case I've ever reported on. Just this poor little boy's vulnerability, their just complete coldness, and also all the red flags that should have been. Sorry, the social services have to take responsibility. If he really did tell the social worker of those thoughts he was having, told his colleague of the dark thoughts he was having, and nobody did anything. His partner didn't do anything, so he wants the book thrown at him as well. They're all guilty, in my opinion, and the person who suffered was little Preston. But do you know what? Little Preston now, he's not suffering. He's better off out of that. I mean, you know, in a way, you sort of think, well, God, because if he wouldn't have died that day, and they wouldn't have had to take him to the hospital, if they wouldn't have gone too far, his abuse could have gone on forever until he was old enough to do something about it himself. You know, this little baby could have been looking at another 10 years of abuse. So it's almost a relief, really, because now at least he's sleeping in, there's no more pain, no more suffering. He's sleeping in the arms of Jesus. Certainly whatever's happening to him is better than what was happening to him with those two monsters. But really what should have happened to him, of course, is he should have been adopted by two parents, or one parent even, who loved him, cared about him, and would never have hurt him. So, okay, I'm going now. It's very sad. I'm sorry it's very sad. So it has to be told because Preston has to have a voice. Who's going to speak for Preston if we don't? You know, who is going to speak for him? Okay, you take care now. Look after you, because you are the most important person. And all I would say is, if anybody ever tells you about how they're, you know, thinking about smothering their child or drowning them, go to the police. I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Sorry to you and my dog, because as soon as I start saying that, she knows I've nearly finished and she'll get some attention. Anyway, thank you for caring about Preston. Bye.